The day my son opened the car dealership I had funded with $450,000. His wife stopped me at the door, looked me in the eyes, and said, "You're not invited. You'd embarrass us." At first, I thought she was joking. I actually laughed, but she didn't laugh back. She folded her arms, stared at my old gray suit, and said, "This event is for important people, investors, wealthy clients. Not this." Then my son stepped beside her, and instead of defending me, he said, "Dad, maybe it's better if you don't come. Now, before I keep going, if you're listening to this, tell me where you're watching from. It still amazes me how far stories like mine travel. And if you enjoy hearing real stories like this, stick around. There's more to come." Anyway, that was the moment my heart broke, because the dealership they were celebrating wouldn't even exist without me. I'm 72 years old, spent over 4 decades in construction, bad knees, broken hands, 2 back surgeries, everything I ever built in life. I built so my son wouldn't have to struggle the way I did. When his mother died, he was 9. I raised him alone, worked double shifts, missed birthdays, skipped vacations, sacrificed everything to make sure he had a better life. So when Daniel came to me 2 years ago, saying he had a dream, a luxury car dealership of his own, I believed in him more than the banks did, more than the investors did. I emptied nearly everything I had: retirement, savings, even sold the lake cabin his mother left me, and gave him $450,000, not because I had to, because he was my son. And fathers do stupid things when they love their children. So standing there on that porch, being told I'd embarrass them, I looked at my son and asked, "My money was good enough to build your dream, but I'm not good enough to watch it open?" He sighed, like I was inconveniencing him. "Dad, don't make this emotional. We're building a brand here. Image matters," his wife added, "and frankly, you don't fit the image." That sentence changed everything, because in that moment, I realized they never saw me as family, only as funding. So I smiled, nodded once, and said, "Understood." Then I turned around and walked back to my truck. But what they didn't know was that before sunset, their grand opening would turn into the worst day of their lives. I drove away from that dealership, gripping the wheel so hard my hands shook. Not from anger, from disbelief. You ever love someone so deeply that betrayal doesn't register at first? That's what it felt like. At the first red light, my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. For one stupid second, I thought he might be apologizing. Instead it said, "Please don't cause drama tonight. We'll talk later." No apology, no regret, just a warning, like I was the problem. I sat there staring at that message when something hit me. That $450,000 wasn't a gift. My accountant had insisted we structure it as an investment. I remembered his exact words: "Never hand over that kind of money without protection, even to family." Buried in that agreement was a clause: if Daniel breached ownership terms or defaulted on repayment, I could reclaim controlling equity, meaning that dealership wasn't fully his, not legally. So I called my attorney. "Frank," I said, "meet me at the dealership in 1 hour." He asked only one question: "Are you certain?" I looked at my reflection in the windshield and said, "They mistook kindness for weakness." And I drove home, put on my best Navy suit, polished my shoes, grabbed the original contracts, and before leaving, I looked in the mirror and said, if they're ashamed of the man who made them, they can learn what life looks like without him. An hour later, I pulled back into the dealership parking lot, and this time, I wasn't there as a guest. I was there as the owner. The place was packed. Luxury cars gleamed under white lights. Champagne flowed. Music played. And standing under the giant dealership sign, smiling like he owned the world, was my son. His wife saw me first. Her face dropped. She stormed over and hissed, "What are you doing here?" "Attending the opening," I said. Daniel rushed over. "Dad, you need to leave. Right now." That's when my attorney walked in, leather briefcase in hand. Daniel's face went pale. Frank opened the case, pulled out the papers, and said loud enough for nearby guests to hear, "Mr. Daniel Carter, due to breach of agreement, Mr. Harold Carter is exercising his right to reclaim controlling equity in this business effective immediately." Silence. Pure silence. Daniel blinked. His wife whispered, "What does that mean?" Frank answered, "It means this dealership is no longer under your control." She went white. Daniel grabbed the papers. "No, Dad, you can't be serious." I looked him in the eyes. "You were worried I'd embarrass you." "That depends on what happens next." Then I took the microphone from the host, turned to the crowd, and said, "Good evening. My name is Harold Carter. And since I apparently wasn't important enough to be invited, allow me to introduce myself as the man who actually owns this dealership." The room exploded. Whispers spread instantly. "He owns it. That's his father? They didn't invite him?" Daniel's face lost all color. His wife clung to his arm and whispered, "Fix this." But there was nothing left to fix. I held the microphone and said, "I spent 43 years breaking my body in construction to give my son a better life. Every dollar I had went into helping him build this business." The room went dead silent. I came tonight hoping to celebrate with him. Instead, I was told I'd embarrass them. A woman near the front covered her mouth. One investor stepped forward. He looked at Daniel and asked, "Is that true?" Daniel said nothing. Couldn't, because his face answered for him. The investor nodded slowly, then said, "If this is how you treat the man who built your future, I can't trust how you'll treat business partners." And he walked out. Then another guest followed. Then another. Within minutes, the room started emptying. Investors, clients, partners, everyone. Daniel grabbed my arm. His voice cracked. "Dad, please, I'm sorry." I looked at him and asked, "Are you sorry because you hurt me? Or because they saw who you really are?" He had no answer. So I signed the transfer papers. Right there, in front of him. And just like that, everything he thought he owned became mine again. But what happened next, I never saw coming. For a moment, nobody moved. Daniel stood there staring at the signed papers like his mind refused to process what had just happened. Then suddenly, he dropped to his knees. Right there, in the middle of the showroom. In front of the guests who hadn't left yet. In front of the staff. In front of his wife. "Dad, please," he whispered, voice cracking. "Don't do this." I made a mistake. I looked down at him and felt something twist in my chest. Because no matter what he had done, he was still my son. Still the boy I taught to ride a bike. Still the child who used to fall asleep on my chest during thunderstorms. But then I remembered him standing at that door, looking ashamed of me, and the feeling hardened again. I asked quietly, "A mistake?" He nodded rapidly. "Yes, I messed up, okay? I got caught up in everything, the pressure, the image, the expectations." His wife cut in immediately. "Daniel, stop begging him." He turned on her so fast, it startled everyone. "Shut up." The room froze. He pointed at her with shaking hands. "This is your fault, too. You kept telling me he made us look cheap. You kept saying we had to distance ourselves from him." Her mouth fell open. "Excuse me? You agreed with me." And just like that, the perfect couple image shattered. They started screaming at each other right there in public, blaming each other, exposing each other, destroying what little dignity they had left. Guests who were still present awkwardly backed away. Some employees pretended not to watch, but everyone watched. Finally, Daniel turned back to me, tears in his eyes. "Dad, please, I'll fix this. I swear. Just give me one more chance." I stared at him for a long moment, then asked the question he feared most. If I had come here tonight quietly, if I had accepted the humiliation and gone home, would you have ever apologized? He opened his mouth, then closed it, because we both knew the answer. No, he wouldn't have. He was only sorry because his world had collapsed, not because he broke my heart. I nodded slowly. That's what I thought. His wife suddenly stepped forward, desperate now, voice trembling. "Mr. Carter, please. If you do this, we lose everything." I looked at her coldly, then said, "You should have thought about that before treating me like I was beneath you." She burst into tears. Daniel just stood there, broken. And for the first time all night, he finally understood something most people learn too late. Success means nothing if you lose your character earning it. I turned to Frank. "Have building management remove them from the premises tonight." Daniel's eyes widened. "Dad, please, where are we supposed to go?" I looked back one last time and said, "Ask the people you chose over family." Then I walked away. But I had no idea. The hardest part of this story was still ahead. 3 days passed before I heard from Daniel again. No apology. Just a voicemail at 11:43 p.m. His voice sounded hollow. "Dad, please call me. It's urgent." I almost deleted it, but something in his tone stopped me. The next morning, I returned the call. He answered on the first ring, and before I could say a word, he broke down crying. Not the kind of crying people fake for sympathy. "She left me," he said. I stayed silent. He sniffled hard. The moment the dealership was gone, she packed her things and left. Sighed she didn't sign up to be with a failure. That didn't surprise me. Women like her never love the man, only the lifestyle around him. Then he said something I wasn't prepared for. "Dad, I'm at the apartment. They're evicting me Friday." I closed my eyes, because despite everything, he was still my son, still flesh of my flesh, still the boy I once carried on my shoulders. I asked quietly, "Why are you being evicted?" His answer came out in a whisper. "I can't afford it without the business income." Silence. Then he said the words every parent dreads hearing from an adult child. "I have nowhere to go." I should have hung up. Part of me wanted to, but another part, the part that spent decades loving him, couldn't. So I told him, "Come by the house at 6. He arrived 15 minutes early. No luxury watch, no designer clothes, no expensive car, just wrinkled jeans, tired eyes, and the posture of a man who had finally met reality. When I opened the door, he started crying again. "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't answer." Just stepped aside and let him in. We sat at the kitchen table in silence for almost a minute before he finally spoke. "I became someone I hate." That was the first honest thing he'd said in years. He looked around the house, at the same walls he grew up inside, at the same table where I used to help him with homework, then whispered, "I forgot who I was." I folded my hands and asked, "No, you forgot who raised you. So tell me, Daniel, why should I help you now?" He cried harder, then said, "Because I know I don't deserve it. And because if you walk away now, you'll be justified. But I'm asking anyway." That answer hit me harder than anything else had. Because for the first time, he wasn't entitled. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't pretending. He was just broken. And maybe, Sometimes people need to lose everything before they're ready to become who they were meant to be. So I looked him in the eyes and said, "You can stay here. Temporarily." He broke down completely. But then I added, "On one condition." He nodded quickly. "Anything." I leaned forward and said, "Tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., you're coming to work with me." His forehead creased. "Work? Where?" I stared at him, then smiled faintly. "At the dealership. Your new position starts tomorrow." His face dropped, because he knew exactly what was coming. And trust me, he was not going to like it. Daniel showed up the next morning at 5:55, 5 minutes early. That alone told me how much his world had changed. Gone was the man who used to stroll into meetings late wearing $1,000 suits and acting like time bent around him. Now he stood on my porch in work boots and borrowed jeans, looking nervous enough to be sick. We drove to the dealership in silence. When we arrived, he followed me inside, expecting perhaps foolishly that I was going to hand him some office role, maybe sales, maybe management. Instead, I walked him straight past the glass offices, past the showroom, and into the service bay. Then I tossed him a rag. He caught it and stared at me. "What's this for?" I looked him dead in the eye. "You're cleaning the shop today." His face fell. "Cleaning? Bathrooms too," I added. He blinked. "Dad, come on." "No," I said sharply. "You wanted to build a luxury brand? Then learn what holds one together. Every successful business stands on people willing to do the work others think they're above." He looked embarrassed, humiliated. Good, that was the point. By noon, his shirt was soaked with sweat, grease on his hands, dust on his jeans, his back aching from hauling supplies and scrubbing floors. At one point, he muttered, "I used to own this place." I turned toward him and said, "No, you managed it. Ownership is earned by responsibility, not titles." That shut him up. Over the next week, I made him do everything. Clean, organize inventory, handle customer complaints, take out trash, sweep the lot. And every single time he complained, I reminded him, "These are the people you thought were beneath you." At first he hated it. I could see resentment in his eyes, pride fighting against humility. But then something started changing. On the 8th day, one of the mechanics dropped a transmission guard and hurt his back. Before anyone could react, Daniel rushed over, helped him up, finished the man's work without being asked. No cameras, no praise, no audience, just instinct. That's when I saw it. The boy I raised still existed in there somewhere. Later that evening, after closing, he sat beside me in the empty showroom and said quietly, "I never understood how hard people work for me. Until now." I nodded, then asked, "And?" He stared at the floor, and I was ashamed of the wrong things. That was the moment I knew the lesson was finally sinking in. But just when I thought things might be turning around, my phone rang. It was Frank, my attorney, and his voice was serious. "Harold, you need to come down to the office tomorrow. There's something in the financial records you need to see." My stomach dropped, because when lawyers sound like that, nothing good follows. And what I discovered the next day changed everything. The next morning, I met Frank at his office. He didn't waste time with small talk. The moment I sat down, he slid a folder across the desk and said, "You need to look at these transactions." I opened it. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Then my stomach dropped. Luxury vacations, designer purchases, private dining bills, jewelry, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, all charged to dealership accounts. I looked up slowly. Tell me this isn't what I think it is. Frank sighed. Daniel's wife had access to company funds. Over the last year, she spent nearly $200,000 through business accounts. My blood ran cold. 200,000? He nodded. And that's only what we've found so far. I sat back in silence. Not angry, just tired. Tired in the way only betrayal from your own blood can make you. That evening, I called Daniel into the kitchen, set the folder on the table. He opened it, started flipping through the pages, and with every receipt, his face got paler. Finally, he whispered, "She told me these were business expenses." I stared at him. "You signed off on them without checking?" He looked ashamed. I trusted her. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because irony can be cruel. Then I said, "Now you know how I felt." That one sentence hit him harder than any yelling could have. He sat down slowly, hands shaking, then covered his face. My God, what have I done? For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he looked up, eyes wet, voice breaking. "Dad, I destroyed everything, didn't I?" I answered honestly, "No, you nearly did. There's still time to fix it if you're willing to face what you've done." He nodded immediately. No excuses. No blaming anyone else. Just quiet acceptance. And for the next several weeks, that's exactly what he did. He worked 12-hour days, reviewed every financial record, called vendors personally, apologized to employees, cut unnecessary expenses, sold off luxury items, even his watch, even his car. Every dollar went back into repairing the damage. And for the first time in years, he stopped acting like success was owed to him. Then one night, after another late shift, he sat beside me in the office and said, "Dad, if I ever earn this business back, I swear I'll never forget this lesson." I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in a very long time, I believed him. So I opened my desk drawer, pulled out a folded document, and slid it across the table. He frowned. "What's this?" I said, "Your chance to earn everything back." His hands trembled as he opened it. Then his eyes widened, because what he saw on that paper was the offer that could change his life forever. Daniel stared at the paper in his hands like he couldn't believe it was real. Then he looked up at me. "You're giving me another chance?" I shook my head. "No, I'm giving you the opportunity to earn one." The contract laid out every condition. He would start at the bottom. No executive title, no ownership, no privileges. For 1 full year, he would work every department of the business: sales, inventory, service, customer support, finance. He would learn every inch of the company from the ground up. And only if he proved himself, only if he rebuilt my trust, would I consider returning partial ownership. Daniel read every line carefully, then signed it without hesitation. And from that day on, he became the hardest worker in the building. He was first to arrive, last to leave. He learned every employee's name, helped clean after closing, stayed late for difficult customers. And something unexpected happened. The staff began respecting him, not because he was the owner's son, but because he finally started acting like a man worth respecting. Months passed. Then one afternoon, I overheard 2 mechanics talking in the service bay. One said, "Hard to believe that's the same guy from before." The other nodded. "Yeah, old man broke him down and rebuilt him, right?" I won't lie. Hearing that meant more to me than I expected, because I hadn't wanted revenge. Not really. I wanted my son back. And slowly, I was getting him. Then came the moment that proved everything. A wealthy client entered the showroom one Saturday, dressed rough, dirty boots, flannel shirt, looked more like a farmer than someone buying luxury vehicles. The younger version of Daniel would have ignored him, judged him, maybe even dismissed him. Instead, Daniel walked right up with a smile, shook his hand, spent nearly 2 hours helping him, treating him with respect the entire time. Later, I asked, "You know who that was?" He shook his head. I smiled. Largest land developer in the county, worth over 30 million. Daniel froze, then slowly smiled, because he understood the lesson immediately. You never know who someone is. And more importantly, it shouldn't matter. Respect should never depend on appearance. That night after closing, I handed him the keys to my office. He looked confused. Then I said, "You've earned management back." His eyes filled with tears. "Dad," I held up my hand. "Don't thank me yet. Ownership still isn't yours." He laughed through tears. Fair enough. And for the first time in years, we laughed together like father and son again. But there was still one final chapter left in this story, because the woman who helped destroy him had just come back. And this time, she wanted something. 2 weeks after Daniel earned management back, she returned. His ex-wife walked into the dealership wearing designer heels, carrying a handbag worth more than most people's rent, smiling like nothing had happened. I watched from my office window as she approached Daniel's desk. At first, he looked stunned, then cold. She touched his arm and said something softly. He pulled away. A few minutes later, he knocked on my office door. "Dad, she wants to talk to both of us." I told him to send her in. She entered with that same polished confidence I remembered from the night she humiliated me, but this time there was desperation underneath it. She sat down and got straight to the point. "I made mistakes," she said. "Daniel and I have history. We can fix this. We belong together." Neither of us said a word. Then she looked at me. "Mr. Carter, I know you never liked me, but I love your son. I just got caught up in success." I nearly laughed. Instead, I asked one simple question. "Where were you when he lost everything?" Her face tightened. She hesitated. That hesitation told us everything. Daniel looked at her quietly and said, "You left me the same day. The money disappeared." She reached for his hand. "Daniel," I panicked. He pulled away again, then stood up straighter than I'd seen him stand in years, and said words that made me prouder than taking back the dealership ever had. "No, you didn't love me. You loved what I could provide." She started crying. Real or fake, I didn't care. Then she looked at me one last time. "Are you seriously going to let him throw this away?" I leaned back in my chair and answered, "No, ma'am. He's finally learning not to." Daniel walked to the door and opened it. "Please leave." She stared at him for a moment, then at both of us, and finally walked out. Gone, for good. The door closed behind her. Silence filled the room. Then Daniel turned to me and said, "A year ago, I would have taken her back." I nodded. "I know." He smiled faintly. "A year ago, I was an idiot." I laughed. "Yes, you were." He laughed too. Then after a moment, I opened the drawer beside my desk, pulled out one final envelope, and slid it across to him. He frowned, opened it, then froze. It was the ownership transfer, 50% of the dealership. Signed. His hands started shaking. "Dad!" I stood up, looked him in the eyes, and said, "This time, you've earned it." He cried. I cried. And then my son hugged me harder than he had since he was a child. That was 3 years ago. Today, our dealership has 2 locations. Daniel runs them with humility. He knows every employee by name. And every year on opening day, he makes one thing very clear to every guest who who walks through those doors. He points to me and says, "None of this exists without my Father." Funny how life works. The man they once said would embarrass them became the man they're proudest to stand beside.